Hi there. Today I am going to share a very short story with you that was included in an anthology a few years ago. The anthology was called Echoes of the Ozarks, and it's volume 5. The Ozarks Writers League published these for a number of years, and I was very privileged to be a part of that group for some time, and they helped me get some of my things kind of out there and start working on some more personal types of writing rather than the very detached and formal educational and nonfiction writing that I was used to making my living at. So this is a little piece. It is not fiction. We'll call it creative nonfiction. It is an account based on a story that my mother would tell me when I was a child, and it has to do with my grandparents and her, and so she's on my mind right now, and I wanted her to remember that I remember. It's called Chick. Archie begged Tressie for 12 years for another baby. When she finally consented, it was a darling little girl with shining black curls who followed her daddy everywhere. When he went out to the fields to feed the cattle, little Joyce tagged along. When Archie crunched through the snow to tend the horses, she toddled behind. When the tractor trundled up and down the rows of next year's crops, there she was, perched atop, pretending to steer. He called her Chick. Archie set out to win Tressie from the moment they met in the little one-room schoolhouse in Bucyrus, Missouri. He had a Welsh heritage, which accounted for his stocky, barrel-chested body. He hadn't started out to be called Archie, but when he arrived at school, there were 2 boys named Claren, so the teacher pinned his middle name on him, and he was forever Archie after that, Arch to his friends. It suited his lopsided grin and the twinkle in his eyes. It didn't take too much to win little Tressie's heart. While the other students laboriously wrote down figures and worked their math problems, Archie spieled off the answers from the top of his head and would then turn and wink at Tressie. She would blush and bow her head, apparently intent on her own work, but really she was writing in the pages opposite her sums. Mrs. Archie Beale. Tressie Vera Beale. Mrs. Claren Archie Beale, trying out her name linked with his. When he was still clinging to his mother's skirts, Archie had watched his older brother fall from a roller coaster at a traveling carnival, killed instantly. It may have been that moment that prompted him to live life to the fullest and get the most from every day. He took jobs that let him see the world, or at least as much of the country as possible. Working the hayfields of Kansas, panning for gold in Colorado, he soaked up knowledge like sunshine. When a friend of dubious honesty begged a ride to Canada for $200, Archie was happy to oblige. And when the friend backed out of paying for the trip, Archie told folks with his lopsided smile, "I guess all I got out of that was the experience." When they married, they looked like a little dollhouse couple. Tressie nearly reached 5 feet with her heels on, and that suited Archie's stature. Her bobbed hair shone with inky curls, and he was proud to drive her up to their humble farm. When Kenneth was born, Archie was so distraught that he rushed out in a blizzard to get the doctor, and then had to tote him from the road to the house when the doctor's buggy could go no further. Tressie was such a tiny woman, and Kenneth was truly a bouncing baby boy, and so she and Archie were happy with their son, and dared not ask for more. At least for a while. Archie always felt lucky to have been born in 1902. It made him too young to go to the First World War, and too old for the Second. That way he could enjoy every moment of his children's lives and stay on the ranch that he loved. Kenneth proved to be much like his mother, following her quiet ways and astonishing green thumb with plants. But he was more than a decade older than his little sister, so they were never destined to be true playmates. She was the family's darling. Mother put her hair in pin curls and chose the prettiest feed sacks to make her clothes from. The Christmas she turned 5, Kenneth stayed up all night putting together an elaborate dollhouse to surprise her with the next morning. Still, she was Daddy's favorite, and she shadowed him constantly. Father and daughter grew even closer when Kenneth left home to begin his own life, and finally they were left alone together when illness took Tressie at last. Archie was proud of his little chick. Though only 14 years old, she took over the running of the house. At noon, she carefully spread a cloth over the remainders of lunch so they would be ready for supper. She washed the dishes with a little bleach and then poured the hot water from the tea kettle over them to rinse. She swept and dusted and laundered for the 2 of them, and when she started high school in the town, her dresses were pressed and pretty by her own hand. When she mounted the steep and crooked stairs to her attic bedroom, she was only a little lonely. Joyce echoed her parents, settling on a farm boy at school. Archie didn't care for him, but he wouldn't have cared for anyone that came courting his daughter. She laughed every time the boy came to call, spluttering down the hill in an old 1931 Chevrolet and honking the horn. And though Archie grumbled at every "Auga," he still walked his little chick down the aisle in her white wedding dress. Summers brought her back again, with children to explore the nooks and crannies of her youth, a daughter to rhapsodize over the horses, a son to scowl about the barnyard, and years later, another little girl who quietly delved into her grandmother's trunks and dreamed of days gone by. The farmhouse fell down a bit, but Archie was too busy showing horses and riding them in parades to be much bothered by it. As long as the barn was solid with a fresh coat of paint, he could make do. As the years went on, he let the cattle go, and the chickens, and he tinkered with leather work and horse breeding. He tried water skiing and took up roller skating, finally operating his own rink and giving generations of children a fun-filled Saturday night. And when he slowed down in later years to read Louis L'Amour by the fire, he would often ramble down to the cafe, drink coffee he didn't like, just to be polite, and tell stories on himself. Folks would come in and say, "Hey, Arch!" and his eyes would light up, and he would give them his lopsided grin, a trifle toothless now, and he would have another bundle of stories ready for the telling. He never seemed to notice the time passing, by the day or by the year. Once, when he sat in a visiting room at a friend's funeral, he jumped up to let some of these older ones have a seat. He was the oldest man in the room by at least 20 years. When he neared the end, he said, "Well, I've done just about everything I wanted to do." And little Chick held his hand and watched him go. She cried because now she was an orphan, and it didn't matter that she was 47. "Who will be proud of me now?" she asked. But in time, the memories grew sweeter, and she looked to her own chicks and found her daddy's lopsided grin and his sparkling eyes and his generous heart. And she knew what it was to be the proud one, and she thought of all the stories she would tell him when she saw him again. That's your story for today. I hope you make it a beautiful one.